Welcome back to Bullet Points, everyone. Happy end of October. Happy almost Halloween. Happy almost November. And most importantly, happy Friday. We hope you're having a good October. And as I said in our last installment, we actually have some good Second Amendment, some good gun news.
And the crazy thing is, this time it comes out of California, which never happens.
Judge Roger Benitez has effectively ruled that the assault weapon ban of 1989 in the state of California is unconstitutional, and therefore it has been struck down. Sort of. Unfortunately, we can't deliver all good news. There is a little bit of slightly alarming news that's causing a little bit of a panic buy in the United States right now. That news being, of course, that the US government just told Winchester that they can no longer sell the surplus military ammo that they are producing out of the Lake City plant. They can no longer sell that off to civilians. As you can imagine, that has created an absolute toilet paper-esque panic buy of all 5.56 and 223 rounds in sporting goods stores. Those two stories plus our Ricochet round and our last shot in just a minute. Okay, so before we go ahead and get into those topics, as always, Aaron and I like to just shoot the bull here. And before we go any further into shooting the bull, wow, this is like a preamble to the preamble. In all of our videos, we do chapters down in the description, and I think they show up underneath the video. So if there's a certain topic that you are looking forward to in this episode, you can just skip right to that. You're not going to hurt our feelings. I sold all mine.
He sold all his feelings to CNN because that's all there is in this article.
I wouldn't sell a piece of my defecate to CNN. Aaron, I was going to ask you how you're doing today, how your week's going, but I think you just kind of summed that up, huh?
It was pretty good. Life is getting better and better with my little one. Staying productive. We've got a lot of projects we're doing around the house. That's been nice. House is very old, so we're modernizing it, touching some things up, making it our own. We've been in the house for a while now, but it takes a while to make it feel like it's yours. So we're slowly working on that. Other than that, nothing to complain about.
Having been the son of parents that have purchased several houses throughout their lives and throughout my childhood, my father actually, when I was buying the house where we currently reside, he said, even when you build your own house, you are going to find problems with it. So even if you if you have a house that's built to spec off of your own designs, there's still going to be problems. And that's kind of the downside to one of the very few downsides to home ownership. If you've been with the channel for a while, you'll know that I like to call out and thank all of our subscribers, all of our den members, the people that are part of our tiny growing community, the people that have subscribed to the channel, and just call out the progress in the subscriber count, the views, like the statistics, the analytics. But lately I've been struggling to make it feel organic with the video, and I end up just leaving it on the cutting room floor as it is, because I don't want it to sound like we're just begging for views or just trying to meet these subscriber goals, which we have had to create another one because we just shattered the one that we had set again. This for the second time this year. We're now aiming for 2,000 by year end, and that's going to be difficult, but it's doable.
We're getting very close to that, hitting the 2,000 subscriber mark by the year's end, and that's something that we came up with as our pipe dream goal toward closer to the beginning of the year. And I've just been so impressed with how our community has rallied together. Thank you to everybody for their support.
Yes, absolutely. I just wanted to also thank you, Aaron, because you have been a big help. Steve has a lot going on in his life. He has 3 children. They're all involved in a lot of sports. So he isn't able to dedicate that much time, and that's by no fault of his own. If you have family, that should always take priority over something like this. Regardless, thank you, Aaron, and thank you again to all of our den members. because we would not be where we are today without you. We would not have gotten that night vision video, that new night vision to the Swift 2. That would not have been possible without people like you that have subscribed to the channel. So thank you so much. With that, let's move on to a little more happy news. The Miller v. Bonta case in California. Essentially, I'm not going to read the ruling on this episode. It's 76 pages, and it essentially boils down to Judge Roger Benitez ripping the state of California, ripping the tyrants in charge out there a completely new hole. It's funny because Langley Outdoors Academy actually said the exact same thing I was thinking. This feels like Benitez wrote this ruling knowing that it was hopefully going to be destined for the Supreme Court's review. He uses facts. He uses facts that have been made readily available to all citizens. And we're going to run through just a few of the statistics that are in just the first couple pages of this decision. A recent large-scale study in the United States revealed that guns are used in defensive situations approximately 1,670,000 times a year. The CDC has its own statistic that says between 500,000 and 3 million instances a year take place, defensive situations where guns stop violence. One, that's a really, really wide margin there, CDC. I mean, and we trust you.
Well, from our interactions with the CDC during the COVID.
That statistic alone should be mind-blowing for anybody that is well-versed in gun violence statistics. In 2021, I believe it was 2021, the number of people that were killed as a result of gun violence was just shy of 49,000 people. To be clear, I'm not saying that 49,000 people, 49,000 deaths a year isn't a lot. It's tragic. But when you take into account that the United States population is over 320 million people, 49,000 people a year is not that many.
Again, it's not excusing that many deaths.
No, you're absolutely right, Aaron. All death to gun violence is a tragedy. The left and the right have different responses to it. The left says, get rid of all guns. Well, that's not going to stop the violence. More people are killed in the United States by bare hands than guns. That's another statistic that people don't want you to hear. More people die every year in the United States by hands and knives than they do guns. But we're only going after assault rifles here.
One of the things that kind of blows me away is the guns that the left chooses to focus on. And they specifically target scary looking guns, as they've and many times identified them, which typically is any gun that has a black plastic or metal stock and is mostly black in color because they look tactical and therefore are dangerous. When, if I'm not mistaken, rifles, if you want to call them AR-15s, because that's the majority of what people refer to as a semi-automatic rifle, they consist of a very small number of gun-related crimes and gun-related deaths in the United States.
In 2021, so the same year that we have the 49,000 deaths in the U.S. due to gun violence, 447 people were killed with rifles. Judge Benitez calls us out. He takes it a step further, and it just feels like he's taking Gavin Newsom and Bonta's noses, their heads, he's taken them into the dog crap that they've laid on the law-abiding citizens of California, and he's just rubbing their faces right in it, and it feels so good. He says, let's assume that all 447 of these homicides the deaths by rifles in 2021 were performed with an AR-15. And let's assume that each one of those deaths was performed by one individual AR-15. Of those over 24 million AR-15 style rifles, less than 0.00001832% were used in homicides. In other words, 99.999985% of those AR-15s are used lawfully and are not a threat to the general public.
I was doing some research on a similar situation with a similar ruling that occurred 2 years ago from the same judge in California. And I was baffled by the statements that were used to refute the judge's statistics in that case, where the statements that were used consisted almost solely of people's feelings about guns. And that's a pattern that we've seen consistently from the left. The first one I want to mention is in reference to this 2021 article that says that the ruling is a, quote, slap in the face to the families who've lost loved ones to this weapon. Second one, quote, look at how many people in our country are dealing with trauma from gun violence, end quote. The third one, quote, I'm certain that every person that's lost a loved one to gun violence or has been threatened or wounded by a gun immediately recoiled at such an obtuse comparison. When they're talking about the comparison, they're talking about the comparison between the judge saying that an AR-15 is similar to a Swiss Army knife in that it is multifaceted and can be used in several different manners, whereas a AR-15 can be used for home defense as well as homeland defense. I think it's essentially the statement that you mentioned at the beginning of this segment, that this law that's been on the books since the 1980s is being overturned. Well, this isn't the first time it's been overturned. So again, the likelihood of this overturning being overturned and it going right back to how it was in the 80s is very high, because clearly Judge Benitez has tried this before and clearly it's not stuck around.
That's kind of like the TLDR of this whole segment. Yes, this is really good news. Judge Benitez is a very based judge. He is the hero of gun rights and freedom lovers in California. And we need to be standing behind him, and we need to be fighting to have more court cases like this, especially with the stuff that's happening out east, like in Massachusetts, where they've got some insane laws that they just what?
Breaking news! The date of this video being recorded, I have an additional positive Second Amendment news story that came out on the opposite side of the country, New York City. Okay, I don't know if you heard about this. New York City, today's date
Did it burn
that
down?
it's being recorded, a federal judge struck down recent provisions in New York City's gun restrictions as unconstitutional. Previously, the city administrators and city officials have been allowed a very wide berth of leeway when it comes to deciding who is and is not allowed to own or possess a firearm. One of those criterion is that they had to be, quote, of good moral character. And that the other one is they had to have, quote, good cause to have to purchase or own a firearm. Judge John P. Cronin in Manhattan, that you were just talking about, said in the written ruling that the amount of discretion allowed by the city officials has been widely untouched and uncontested, and that it's in direct violation of the Constitution's Second and 14th Amendment. And I just wanted to throw that bit in there because from the East Coast to the West Coast, great things are happening. And I think that these are very complementary pieces of legislation. And congrats to New York City on a Second Amendment win and getting closer to being able to own firearms and carry them in public.
Yes, congratulations to the New York City denizens for being slightly less cucked. Now, back to our regularly scheduled program. So the TLDR of the entire decision and Benitez's ultimate overturning of the California assault weapons ban is pretty much summed up, naturally, in the conclusion. And I'm going to quote this here. There is only one policy enshrined in the Bill of Rights. Guns and ammunition in the hands of criminals, tyrants, and terrorists are dangerous. Guns in the hands of law-abiding citizens are necessary. To give full life to the core right of self-defense, every law-abiding, responsible individual citizen has a constitutionally protected right to keep and bear firearms commonly owned and kept for lawful purposes. That right there perfectly sums up in a single paragraph the arguments that I have brought forth, Aaron has brought forth, any gun tuber on YouTube has brought forth. A good guy with a gun is the only thing to stop a bad guy with a gun. We're not just talking about a home defense situation. We're not just talking about being out in public. We're not just talking about, God forbid, a school shooting or any other kind of mass shooting. Statistically, the only thing that stops bad people with guns, tyrants, evil regimes, terrorists, the only thing that stops any of these people that have guns or firearms or weapons of mass destruction, what have you, are other people with very similar, if not superior, firearms.
But Matt, if we can't ban firearms, why don't we just ban or quit making ammunition?
Aaron, you're getting ahead of yourself. You forgot the Ricochet round. Hang on to that thought. All right, Ricochet round. Aaron, you asked the question last month about smart guns, and I've been seeing more and more on that, especially on Facebook. If you don't think that your phone listens to you, it does. My question for you, and anybody down in the comments, you can chime in after the fact. Money is no object. Okay? Law is no object. What small arms, meaning a firearm, what firearm would you have? What is the one gun you want most?
I have to pick one.
It doesn't mean you can't have other ones, but what is the one that you've always wanted?
If money was no object and it was entirely legal, the first thing that came to my mind was an M134 minigun.
Oh, I hadn't even thought of that. See, okay.
We've been playing a lot of Battlefield 2042, and some of the vehicle-mounted guns got me thinking about that.
Brr.
And yep, brr, that's all I have to say. Do you know how much they cost? I just looked this up.
I just saw it.
$250,000 for an M134. What's funny is 2 months ago, if you had asked me this question, my answer would be very different. I would have said an F-35, but lo and behold, one landed in my backyard.
So my gun of choice, money's no object, legality is no object. I am going far more conservative than Aaron. I have always had this strange love. Maybe it's not strange, but I've always had a love for the M240 Bravo. I don't know if there's a civilian variant of the M240. I feel like there probably isn't. I mean, there may be. I know there's a civilian variant of the M249, the Saw. I think I've said it on the channel before. If and when we hit 10,000 subscribers, please, God, don't let this happen overnight after this video is released. If and when we hit 10,000 subscribers, I will buy an M249 and have it on the channel as kind of our, hey, we hit 10,000 subscribers. No, I'm not lying. Yes, I'll probably have to sell an organ or two, but I will get an M249 on the channel. Maybe the 249 wouldn't be a good idea because we're going to have a shortage of 5.56 and 2.23 rounds for the foreseeable future because we've just gone toilet paper status from 2020. The government just ordered Winchester, who has the lease on the Lake City plant down in Missouri. They have the government contract to make all of the military's 5.56 22 rounds at that plant. Well, in the past, they are able to take all the excess ammo, the ammo that they make, but the government doesn't order. They have been allowed to sell it off to civilians commercially. And that has become, I believe, and you can correct me down in the comment section. I know you will. And this is YouTube, but I believe the Lake City plant accounts for around 30% of domestic, so US made 5.56 2.23 rounds. This resulted, shockingly, in a wave of panic buying that I saw firsthand. I didn't catch the news when it first dropped, but I was at my local sporting goods store because I'm looking for a scope for my upper that I'm about to get for hunting this year. I see these people going by with these baskets of 2.23 and 5.56. I didn't think anything of it. I just bought a bunch. I've got plenty. Because I don't wait for a serious issue to come up to be like, maybe I should buy more ammo. I don't know how I feel about this. On the one hand, I don't like the fact that the government is telling them to stop selling to the public. But at the same time, I mean, they are contracted at that plant. They don't own the plant. They lease the plant from the government. Given the world situation right now, I don't know whether this is our very benevolent government right now saying, no, if we can't stop them from buying guns, we're going to stop them from buying the ammunition. I don't know whether they're doing that or saying, we are probably going to have to stockpile this just in case bad things start happening elsewhere in the world. And we're not going to get into that because
we
it is
might need some of this.
Honestly, it could be both. What do you think?
I don't know. That's a good question, and this is gonna go into our last shot, but I don't like to speculate. I'm not one that forms opinions based off of extremely presumptive information without having context or citable sources that I can verify myself. When it comes to me and the news, I take everything I read I take everything I read with a grain of salt. I don't take it at face value. Uh, I I frequently use the phrase trust but verify, and a lot of times the verification that I go through uh, makes me not necessarily trust the sources that I'm reading. So I compile the information for myself, and at this point, I don't know if I have a clear answer as to what the government may or may not be doing.
Regardless of the reasons behind this decision by the government, it kind of sucks, especially for people that haven't I don't want to say prepped for this, but people that kind of live or go to the gun range ammo box, similar to living paycheck to paycheck, shooting box to box. But I think that topic is just about talked out. It'll be interesting to see what happens over the next weeks, months, and the rest of the year. Gosh, we're in the final quarter of 2023. Holy cow.
Mm-hmm.
I know other companies are already ramping up production to meet the extra demand that is definitely going to happen, but it'll be interesting to keep an eye on. Don't go out and start going all 2020 with the toilet paper, guys. We're better than that. Before we close out, Aaron, you said that you had some final thoughts, a last shot that is kind of in line with what we've been talking about here.
I want to talk a little bit about echo chambers, and we all live in them, whether you want to recognize it or not. There are some people who actively try to expand outside of that bubble that they live in. I like to consider myself one of those people. I definitely would say that I have an echo chamber. I surround myself with like-minded people. But I absolutely have friends that I don't agree with just about anything they believe, but we're able to be friends. And occasionally we will have difficult conversations. We've also talked about echo chambers when it comes to news articles today. We were talking about, not jumping to conclusions based off of extremely preemptive information that we don't have context of. If you are listening to news stories and you take what you hear at face value, instead of doing the research for yourself to validate the claims that are being made, you are simply reinforcing your deeply held beliefs, and regardless of which side of the aisle you stand on, regardless of your political views, your religious views, whatever it is, I highly encourage you to challenge yourself and to be constantly improving.
I feel like you're calling me out, Aaron.
And if the boot fits, right?
It doesn't.
If I need to challenge you to expand your horizons, then so be it. The more you're able to listen to understand instead of listen to reply, the more you can understand where somebody else is coming from, the easier it is to have a conversation, to build common ground, and to have those discussions without them becoming degraded, hostile, violent. That's why I don't like to jump to conclusions. It's like why I don't like to make presumptions without context. If somebody asks me my opinion on things before I've done any research on it, I will tell them I haven't formed an opinion yet because I don't have the research or the knowledge to have formed an educated opinion. And normally that response is met with gratitude and humility because they say, you know what? That's a good answer.
Whereas me, when he does this crap, it drives me insane because I want an answer right here and now.
That being said, I think that ends our last shot. That's going to do it for this month's episode of Bullet Points. Thank you for watching, and thank you for helping us get closer to our subscriber goal of 2,000 subscribers. You can like this video and share it with your friends and family to help us hit that goal.
As always, don't take life too seriously.
And make it a great day.